I'm Jennifer, and I'm an environmental lawyer working with property owners throughout California. Sometimes environmental law is like playing detective, and I'd like to talk about why the obvious answer isn't always the right answer, and you need to keep digging until a mystery is solved. We have a client that's owned some property since the 1980s. Given how it was used and given that it sits on groundwater that's been regionally and historically contaminated by numerous industries, the state of California ordered our client to investigate whether his property has some contamination somewhere in the soil that threatens the health of people who live nearby. So it doesn't want to take our word for it that the property's fine. Our consultants went through a few rounds of showing that there's no scientific evidence anywhere that our client's property caused any contamination. And there are some obvious reasons why you'd find evidence of chemical vapor at the property. It sits on contaminated groundwater. So of course, that groundwater is going to release chemical vapors up into the soil. And our consultants discovered that there's an old manufacturing business next door that had a history of contamination that was never cleaned up. That also seems like an obvious answer. But the problem is that our data showed more contamination on the other side of the property, away from the contaminated neighbor. The findings didn't make sense. When I work with consultants, I'm always thinking of whether the information we gather tells a cohesive, understandable story. I'm the one who might have to go into court to explain why my client hasn't done anything wrong. And I don't like inconsistencies between the story we're trying to tell and the evidence. So I sent our consultants back to investigate the history of the neighborhood more. And guess what they found? Back in the 1970s, there was a dry cleaner just a block away on the same side of the property where we encountered problems. Dry cleaners historically used the exact same chemical. That explains what was found at our client's property and where it is actually coming from. If we had just accepted the obvious answer, we wouldn't have found the real answer. And we could be looking at more years of trying to satisfy the state that our client's property isn't jeopardizing people's health. This is a good example of how the science and the legal analysis can work together to help property owners rein in the government's assumptions and demands. If you're a consultant or a property owner facing similar issues, it never hurts to find out whether there's a legal remedy to get you relief. Call or email us to talk about whether your property could benefit from having that legal insight to get through an investigation more quickly.